Hi, here's Michael Leander. I'm at the Conrad Hotel in Dubai, and we're in the middle of the Middle East Retail Forum, and I happen to meet somebody who is very knowledgeable in the retail and customer experience space. His name is Simon. He hails originally from the UK, but he's a bit of a globetrotter, and I've asked him to share some of his amazing insight with you right now, so listen up to what he has to say. But Simon, why don't you introduce yourself to the camera first?
Hi there, I'm Simon Hathaway. I'm the Global Chief Retail Officer for Cheil worldwide. Many of you won't have heard of that agency, but you probably are familiar with our work. We're the agency that created the first virtual store in a Seoul subway, and that image has become a bit of a poster child for what's happening in the transformation of retail today, particularly around the mobile.
And when you look at retail and the trends going on right now, what would you say, if you were to give advice to retailers around the world, what are the three most important things for them to focus on over the coming years?
I think there's a huge amount going on in retail at the minute, and then the complexity is creating real challenges for retailers. I think the first thing is really obviously to understand what your retailer expects from you. What your consumer or your customer or your shopper or just the real human being that comes to your store is expecting from you, because that is changing and their expectations are being reset every day because of the new experiences they're having in retail. So the first thing is to get to grips with that individual. And the second thing is then to start thinking about how are you delivering the experience that they need. And that is about understanding the value. They're now thinking that retail is everywhere, it's instant, it's personal, because they've got devices like mobile phones that enable them to do that sort of thing. So how are you meeting that expectation? And then the third thing is then really understanding about what the values are that you communicate as part of that, and how you define the value. For a long time, most retailers have just talked about price, and price is still a huge driver, as has been location. But now value is changing, and that piece about price times quality is arguably being influenced by convenience. So really, for me, the biggest word almost today in retailing is convenience, because if you can deliver that in the right way, you are fundamentally changing the experience for the shopper, and their expectations are very clear. That they want something that's everywhere, it's instant, and importantly, it's also personal.
And when you talk about the mobility space, my understanding is that South Korea seems to be ahead of the game when it comes to delivering experiences of all sorts in the mobility space. Is that true? And what can we learn, if it's true, what can we learn from South Korea?
So I think in some cases it's certainly true. We've seen a lot of big innovation come out of Korea. Though just so you know, it's still only in terms of smartphone penetration, it's still only the fourth biggest market in the world. The place with the most smartphones is actually Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
So kind of an interesting dynamic. But what we're seeing there is a change in behaviour because of the smartphone, and that is driven particularly around their speed of signal. So they're now at 5G, which means things happen very, very quickly. And that's accelerating behaviours that we're perhaps not seeing in other markets. And I think some of the things that we're looking at, which are really interesting, is then what that means, because the mobile device is taken with you everywhere. And in retail, that means it's not just about m-commerce, because that's what he's been talking about, because the mobile goes in store with you as well. So we've started to look at solutions that enable people to take their mobile in store, to navigate the store, to find the right offers. We did a thing with eMart called Sale Navigation that literally guided people around their stores. And in fact, if I was going to make any real money in retailing today, what I'd be doing is selling mobile phone holders for shopping carts, because that's what people need. If they can't push a trolley cart around with a thing in their hand. And that whole thing is starting to change. The other big area there is Wi-Fi. So everywhere you go, there is pretty much free Wi-Fi, and because of the cost of that signal, Wi-Fi is becoming almost like table stakes for retail experience, and that gives you a huge amount of knowledge about what people are doing, and it also enables you to take them to a space where you want them to be. because you have to sign into Wi-Fi, that landing page is always going to be where they start.
Yeah.
So you can control some of that experience if you go in store, and if you're a brand or you're a retailer, where they land on your free Wi-Fi is the start of their experience, and that is starting to change as well.
Very interesting. I'd like to ask you just for one last thing, is do you know of a model retailer, a retailer that has gone through all of these different phases and has arrived at some point where they're able to meet and exceed customer expectations consistently?
I think that the challenge with that is that, as with all things, technology doesn't stop, right? So, and as I've talked in the conference today, every time we get a new piece of technology, as people, our expectations are reset. So that's a very difficult thing to maintain.
Yeah.
And we talk about time, money, and frustration budgets, and that issue of ensuring that the new technologies don't get in the way of that frustration budget is really, really important. I think if you look at what's happening at the moment, there are one or two retailers who are starting to get it right. Quite a few in the US who've, I think if you look at Target, really interesting what they're doing and how they're bringing stuff together. E-Mart in Korea is another retailer, one that we work with, which is really understanding that their experience is everywhere, intimate, personal. And then perhaps, obviously one closer to home for me is John Lewis. And I think what's most interesting about them is that they've actually looked fundamentally at their business and what it means to be both online and offline, and how they must structurally change behaviours internally to do that. So most interestingly is that they've just merged roles. So they've taken the online director and the retail director roles and merged them into one single role.
Excellent.
And then they've taken the marketing director and the customer service, or the CX role, customer experience role, and merged that into one role as well, because they understand that the brand that they communicate externally has to be delivered internally, because you're only as good as the work you do. So I think that's starting to shape that behaviour. And of course then they've also approached the incentive schemes, because that really is what drives behaviour in a lot of organisations. And their individual store managers are now bonused based on not only the store sales, but also the geographical reach of that store online, because they understand the catchment area and what that does in terms of driving sales. So for me, that's a great example of a retailer who's probably never going to keep up with all the technology changes, but is putting in place the fundamental building blocks to ensure that their business is ready for an omni-channel world.
Very excellent. Thank you so much. And to you who listened in here, you will find links somewhere on this page to Simon's LinkedIn profile, to his company, and elsewhere links to resources that will teach you more or inspire you more about how to play the customer experience game in the retail sector over the coming years. Here's Michael Leander signing out, wishing you a great day today and all the other days. Ciao.